Graniola. This is the Graniola channel, and I'd like to tell you a folk tale. Human sacrifice has existed basically from Neolithic times until today. What I find really interesting about the folk tale that follows is the message they try to give when talking about it. This is a tale that tells of how the earth became inhabited by plants and animals. The first people were born out of a huge bunch of bananas that grew high up on a tree on the top of a mountain. They all walked down into a valley that became known as the place of the 9 dance grounds, and they divided themselves into the 9 original families. 8 of those were each made up of a combination of parents and children, but in the beginning, the 9th was only one man who lived all alone. One night, that single man was awoken by the screeches of a wild boar who had gotten tangled up in the bush surrounding his hut. After the man had unwound the vines that had tethered the beast's legs, the agitated animal bolted, and when he did so, a hard, round object fell off one of his tusks onto the ground. The man picked the thing up and took it into his house. He had never seen anything similar. He put it carefully on a small table that was next to his bed and covered it with a cloth. Although he was curious about it, he was also exhausted from the work of freeing the large beast, and he fell asleep quickly. In his dreams, a person who looked quite different from anyone he had ever seen before spoke, instructing him to plant the round thing, which was the original coconut, next to his home. He did as he was told, and in 3 days a small green palm tree appeared, popping out of the ground where the coconut was buried. After 9 days, that small green sprout had grown into a very tall tree, bearing several coconuts surrounded by leaves and blossoms. The man decided to climb up and pick some of the coconuts. While climbing up the tall trunk, he accidentally cut his hand. Drops of his blood fell onto one of the palm tree's blossoms. 9 days later, that blossom swelled out, and wrapped in its leaves, the man found a small baby. Having no family, he'd felt quite lonely and was overjoyed to now have a daughter. It took only 3 days for her to grow into a young woman. Not only was she extremely beautiful, she had a very special gift. When she stooped down to defecate, instead of small turds being evacuated from her bowels, precious items, coral necklaces, golden plates, silver gongs, etc., fell onto the ground. At some point, the people of the 9 dance grounds organized a celebration to give thanks to the goddess who protected them. It was to last 9 days and 9 nights. The girl and her father gathered up all of their valuable items into 9 piles with the intention of gifting them to the members of the other 8 families on each of the festival days. On the first night of the celebration, those neighbors were happy and grateful for the presents they received, but as the days passed, they grew resentful, thinking the man and his daughter were so much richer than the rest of them. Early on the morning of the 9th day, a group of men dug a pit in the center of the dance grounds, and in the final hours of the last evening of revelry, while everyone was dancing wildly, threw the special girl into it. They tossed dirt over her, filling the pit and burying her alive. They then danced on top of that place while the loud music covered her cries. When her father found out that his daughter had been killed, he was enraged. He dug up her body and chopped it into several parts. After putting aside her arms, he took these pieces and buried them in different locations all around the land. Plants began to grow in those spots. These root vegetables and tubers were new to the world, and they became the main food of the people that still live in that place. He carried her arms to the goddess who had always looked after the 9 families and explained to her what had happened. The goddess was furious. She built a circular gate and placed the girl's arms on top of it. She forced all of the people on earth to form a line and then one by one to pass through the gate. Those that were good-hearted continued to the other side, but those who were mean-spirited turned into animals, pigs, cows, or birds. The people of that place tell and retell this story, and they give thanks for the world that they live in today, and are comforted that from death can come new life. You may have guessed from the fruits talked about in this story that it comes from a tropical country. This is a tale that is told in Indonesia.